well, I'm doing all these things, and okay, and like, does a light go on and magically I'm, Superman? I'm Thor from whatever his name is, Chris Hemsworth? No.
This is Mind for Survival with your host, Brian Duff.
Hey everybody, Brian Duff here, and I want to welcome you back to another week on the Mind for Survival. I have a really fun episode for you today. I'm going to be speaking with Chris Viggiano of aimhumanperformance.com. And he's here to talk about one of the most fundamental things that a lot of us either neglect, don't pay attention to, or get wrong when it comes to our preparedness, to our resilience, to our own self-reliance. And that is being healthy, being fit, and being well, and making sure that our overall wellness is appropriate and that we maximize it for whatever our particular situation is. It doesn't mean we all have to be an Olympic decathlete. It doesn't mean that we are, we're going out there and being the top of the NFL football recruiting pool or anything like that. It means, in my case, I'm a 55-year-old dude who has some bumps and bruises and busted up back and all the other stuff that goes with living a fun, active life and doing all kinds of stuff over the years. So being as healthy and fit and capable as I am for my situation. And we're going to cover everything in this episode, from diet, nutrition, mindset, the whole 9 yards. There's a lot packed into it, but I think it's super great for everybody to dial in, because the vast majority of us in the preparedness and resilience community aren't as healthy as we can be for our situation. So I think it's a super important topic. And before we get in this episode, if you like this stuff, if you like the podcast, if you like the YouTube channel, all that stuff, make sure you head on over and like, share, and subscribe. It really helps out the show, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast. Share it with your friends. There's a lot of people out there right now with everything that's going on in the world who are into preparedness and are into becoming more self-reliant and more resilient, but they don't know where to turn, and they're not confident in asking the questions. So if you might have those people in your life, please, by all means, share, like, and subscribe to the show. And with that, let's go ahead and get in this episode with myself and Chris Viggiano. I am so excited for today, because today I'm having a great conversation with someone I've been talking with for a bunch of years now, who started following the podcast a long time ago. And that's Chris Viggiano. And Chris began his fitness career, because that's what he's here to talk about: health, wellness, fitness, and all that good stuff, because that's what we need in the preparedness community. Anyhow, Chris began his fitness career in the 1990s with a focus on Shaolin Kempo karate, earning a black belt and developing a passion for movement. His journey included teaching martial arts and integrating strength training, leading to his first personal trainer certification from Hofstra University. Relocating to Virginia in 2005, Chris expanded his expertise through courses in TRX, foam rolling, trigger points, breast cancer rehabilitation, and completing both the muscle activation techniques and resistance training specialist programs. His dedication to fitness took a new turn in 2016 when he began working with Parkinson's patients, utilizing boxing as a therapeutic tool and volunteering with the Parkinson's Foundation. In 2017, he and his wife, Michelle, opened AIM Human Performance, featuring a vast collection of MedX machines. They further expanded in 2022 with the AIM Longevity Lab, Northern Virginia's only elite recovery center. And Chris, I'm really stoked to have you on today, because you have a lot of experience in health and wellness, and you live the wellness life. With that, following our conversation the other day, because Chris and I were on the phone the other day talking for about 2 hours about this, I believe you have a great perspective that can help people become more resilient, more capable, and in the long run, more self-reliant. And your perspective, if I'm not mistaken, revolves around the belief that there is a void in the preparedness community with regard to health, fitness, and overall wellness. When we talked, you said that much of that has to do with the notion that wellness is not perceived by many as being cool, like talking about bug out bags, water filters, and so on. And you also mentioned that you believe wellness takes a back seat because it's a deeply individual ecosystem of exercise, nutrition, rest, and sleep that's individualized for each person. Each person needs to do their own individual thing and figure out what works for them. Does that about sum it up and give us a good launching pad for the conversation?
Yeah, Brian. I mean, in a nutshell, that's what it is as you've mentioned, I've listened to your podcast since episode 1 a long time ago, and I've always felt this need, and I've seen this void in the community of fitness and wellness, and everything is just, all right, strength training, go exercise. And it's always this top level of the trees. And I use a great word here at AIM called the ecosystem. And again, it's not as fun and exciting to talk about as bug out bags and blackout kits. What if the zombies show up? What if the magnetic reversal of the poles or anything? It's not as fun. It's not as enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
However, for me, it is our number one prep, because without our health, we can't do anything, right? If we need to beat feet for whatever reason, we can't. I'm in a blizzard, I'm snowed in at home, I need to shovel out. If I don't have my health, I can't. I can't lift that bug out bag. I can't build a shelter. I can't do anything without my health. And that's why I always think it's our number one prep, and building that health and working on our health every day builds our resiliency to stress.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, right? Because ultimately, man, I think doesn't it go past just the looking at from a preparedness perspective of bug out bags and, how far can I walk, with a bug, when the zombies come to eat me, can I outpace the zombies, as to, the odds. And we can say, I've had this conversation, these one-on-one interviews with people that I've been doing based on that survey you took. And it's, we tend to constantly believe, hey, something bad's going to happen next year. And I admit I'm right there. Like, hey, maybe 2024 might be a complete train wreck. And that's what a lot of people are worried about. A lot of people are fearful of. And in all of our lifetimes, in our parents' lifetimes and our grandparents' lifetimes, our society hasn't ended. Maybe there was like Hurricane Katrina. There's been a few, some isolated events that people needed to get their game on and stuff like that. But overall, people live their lives until their life stops. And so health and wellness contributes to that, right? If we operate under the assumption that, and the hopeful assumption that nothing happens terribly bad, it's your health and wellness contributes to your overall life, right?
Exactly. We hear our tagline at our studio here is, here at AIM, it's actually an acronym. It stands for Assess, Improve, and Maintain. Because for our clients and for everybody, for the community, we want to improve, we want to assess, improve, and be able to maintain our health and our wellness so we can increase our quality and increase our quantity of time on this earth. You talk about all the time about, relieving unwanted struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And just life is a grind. And the unwanted struggles that go on with life can be alleviated via wellness, via our health. Because as you said, world hasn't ended in any of our lifetimes, but our lifetime does come to an end. But do I want to be healthy and expand and create what we call a centurion decathlon with our clients, where we don't want to look for 3-month goals. We want to look for 30-year goals. What do you want to do when you're 100 years old? And let's work towards that. Who cares if in 3 months whether or not zombies show up? Or I want to lose 5 pounds because I want to look better in a bathing suit. Let's think about this. Let's look at the forest as opposed to just that next tree that I'm trying to get to. And we can decrease that struggle. We can increase our resiliency via our health, via our wellness. I mean, it takes focus. It takes, commitment. It takes intentional effort, all which goes into every level of our preparedness. Whatever that level is, whatever you're working on now, you're taking time, you're taking effort to improve that resource. Our body's our first resource. Why not spend more intentional time, more intentional effort on that most important resource?
what do you think? Why don't people like? What do you find? I mean, you've trained lots of people. You and your wife have been doing. Michelle have been doing it for years. What are the hurdles that get into people's way? Because I think when we sit down, people sit down, right, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I got to get better prepared." And then immediately it jumps over the health, the wellness, the mental health, the mindset and stuff. And it goes to, like we talked about earlier, the bug out bags, the Sawyer mini water filters and all that. What's that hurdle? What's that barrier that's keeping people from moving down that road?
I would say one is accessibility, having access to it. And that's a full on spectrum. As a personal trainer, clients pay me for my expertise, not just the 1 hour or I'm with them once, twice, 3 times a week, but the expertise that goes into everything behind the scenes. But having that access to a subject matter expert costs money. And, that's a resource that not a lot of people have as a disposable income, especially right now with, the current state of the economy. And so having the access to, whether it be a gym or a wellness center or, access to even the knowledge behind the why this is important is one of the biggest ones. And the other one is, commitment. I don't want a motivated client. Motivation wanes over time. Commitment does not. Think about the words that commitment, when you mention commitment, you really mean. Resolutions, you really mean. Commitment to marriage, commitment to children, family. What about that commitment to ourselves and our wellness? And that's something that everybody's like, well, I'm doing all these things and okay, and like, does a light go on and magically I'm, Superman? I'm Thor from whatever his name is, Chris Hemsworth? No, but you know what? We're reducing that unwanted struggle. And those, I think, to answer your question, are two of the biggest barriers is that accessibility to it, as well as that commitment to do it, even when it's not, it's a little cold outside. I didn't want to do my cold therapy. I'll be honest with you. So I'm going to push it off to tomorrow, but I'm going to make a commitment to myself to do it tomorrow, as opposed to, I just pushed it off today.
Well, you mentioned accessibility. I mean, would commitment in a way kind of come first just to get somebody up and going, to get them out the door, to, I don't know, going for a walk or doing something more and taking more, I guess, ownership of their personal health and saying, hey, I need to, and I'm not saying that everybody, right. And I assume you agree that everybody's limited by their personal situation when it comes to, hey, if you have diabetes or you're really overweight and you haven't done anything, you're 70 years old, whatever that is, we all have limitations. I just, going to group jujitsu, I'm 55 years old, man. Like I'm not the 20 something year olds that are in there doing jujitsu, and I have to take that into account. I have to put that in my mind and not try to compete on their level. But it seems like is that sort of where it needs to kind of start?
Yes, it absolutely starts with the individual because, as I say, you are unique like everyone else. Mm-hmm. So your whole wellness approach has to be unique to you. And having the commitment to say, okay, because that takes time. You can Google exercise and get thousands of pages and ads for exercises, but they're not specific or unique to me because I might have a bum back, a bad knee, or something going on that's going to prevent me from doing, fill in the blank exercise, or that might not be appropriate. So having the accessibility to the knowledge, but the commitment to go down some of those rabbit holes, to explore it deeper than just the overarching exercise is good, I'm just going to go exercise.
Yeah.
It has to be unique to the person because we are all individual.
Yeah. Let's backtrack a little bit. What do you define as wellness? I mean, fitness, health. Like what's your definition of all that?
it ties into resiliency, wellness,
Right.
right? We have to be able to rebound. And I was thinking about this word resiliency these past few days, and I've come to a definition of that is our ability to continually recover from a stressful event, whether that stressful event is deliberate or not. Um, and that's wellness is, things are going to happen. Things happen to us on a daily basis. There are processes going on in our bodies as we're sitting here talking, Brian, that have to be cleaned up, that have to be removed. This is a stress event for us, and our bodies have to handle that. And that goes into our wellness, is being able to be, being resilient. That's wellness. You are resilient to being unwell.
Right.
Your wellness is all encompassing. It's an ecosystem. I keep using this word ecosystem because it's made up of, think of it as a forest. It's not just one tree in the forest. It's not one tree called fitness and exercise. It's a tree called sleep. It's a tree called nutrition. It's a tree called recovery. You have, a brain and mental health, go into that ecosystem that make up you, which is different than my ecosystem, which is different than every one of your listeners' ecosystem. Is, fitness and wellness is having an understanding of that ecosystem and then being able to, make that a healthier ecosystem and being able to work within the full ecosystem and not just on one section or one slice of the pie.
Yeah. Where should people, if you're somebody that's sitting there go, oh, I need to be healthier. Like we all know deep down, right? We know when we're sitting there and, you go in the bathroom in the morning, you get out of the shower or whatever, you know whether you're happy with what's going on. And when you go out to do something that's, I don't know, some sort of activity or, whatever. And you go, oh God, I get out of breath walking to the end of my driveway, taking out the trash cans kind of stuff. Like we all know whether we're happy with our current position, but where should somebody, what do they do? Like, someone's sitting home right now, like, all right, I need to motivate. Like, I want to be healthier. We got, difficult times coming. The last thing I need to do is spend money on doctor's visits and spend money on medication, because the healthier you are, the less medications you need to take, the less times you need to go to the doctor, all the 9 yards. Yeah, we all know that. It's like brushing your teeth, right? Brush your teeth, floss your teeth, and hopefully help keep the dentist away. So where should someone start?
The easy question, right where they are. Start where you are. Because if I'm going to continually do something hard, it's going to be continually challenging. I'm not going to like it. And my brain and my body are conditioned to not like it and say, I want to remove this stress and not do it. Mm-hmm. And that's where we start going down the hill. So if we start where we are and say, what can I do to make this a little more challenging?
What do you mean by that?
Principle. We have a principle in exercise called the SAID principle, SAID, specific adaptation to impose demand. Mm-hmm. So if I am struggling carrying the garbage out to the end of the driveway, okay, that was work. So let me back that up a little bit, because now I know that that's work. And let me break that down into pieces. And I just start working on those pieces. Maybe I might do a couple of quick walks. Every time I go to my car when I leave the house in the morning, instead of just going to the car, putting my briefcase in the car and then getting in, maybe I might take an extra walk down and up that driveway a few times. It's 30 seconds. It's 1 minute. It doesn't cost anything. You already paid for your driveway, or you're paying for it with your mortgage. So it's there to use. Oh, and it's on an incline. So maybe if I walk a little faster up, I can start with that, making this a little more challenging and then getting my heart rate going a little bit. So then maybe I won't be as winded, and then start. A gallon of water is 8.3 pounds. So we talked about accessibility. People listening at home probably have some sort of water storage. Each gallon is 8.3 pounds. Start with that. I put one down at the bottom of your staircase and carry it up the stairs. And then when you get there, carry it back down again. That's how easy that is. However, if I'm 20 something years old and I do CrossFit and I can run through a wall, well, fantastic, because you're already working on that exercise portion. That's great. Hey, how do you challenge that more? And if you're in that realm and if you're in that environment, you already know how to challenge it. You already know how to structure it with, you might always be doing the same 3 sets of 10 repetitions, but, then you can start structuring it differently, and start working in a different paradigm instead of just strength. Maybe you build in some, as we call in my world, power work, where, that's explosive movement. So maybe start jumping or start moving faster. But wait a minute, Chris. I'm 50 something years old. I got 2 bad knees. I'm a 72-year-old who has a cancer diagnosis. My medication is sapping my energy. And you want me to do explosive stuff? Yes. But that does not mean jump on a box. When you go for your walk, instead of just walking from one mailbox to another, can you walk a little faster to that mailbox? Mm-hmm. Can you walk faster to just bring up that heart rate a little bit? Because as we elevate our heart rate, things happen in our body, and our body starts secreting different hormones that help make us more resilient. And just by doing the simple things, but meeting yourself where you are and going from there, not diving into, because I've seen it and I've seen it as a trainer. I've made that mistake doing it as a trainer in my past of everybody that comes in, we're going to get the same workout and we're going to drive this thing 1,000 miles an hour and we're going to see what happens. And, oh, you couldn't handle it. Well, you're just weak and you will eventually get better. And they don't come back. Right. Because my knee hurts, my back hurts. And now I don't like this exercise thing because that's the picture in my head. And exercise is unique for everyone. My job as a trainer is to make it more palatable for you, but it also challenges you appropriately. And that's the key to resiliency. Remember, we gave that definition earlier of applying a deliberate stress and then recovering from it. Mm-hmm. If you cannot recover from that stress you are providing, that stress is too much. And we won't adapt to it. We'll get hurt. That's the adaptation that occurs.
Yeah. So I guess part of, when you talk ecosystem, then part of your ecosystem is, because it's all individual and it's focused on each person as an individual and what their capabilities are and where they're at in their current health and fitness abilities. I guess a big chunk of that then is managing your expectations, right? Because and managing your reality, I guess that's all that kind of goes hand in hand. And when I say that, because, in the back of my mind, I still have these dreams of grandeur from when I was in my 20s. I was in Ranger Battalion. I was going out and I would come home on leave and have nothing to do. So I'd get up and run 20 or 30 miles. And then, next day, go run another 20 or 30 miles. It was just like no big deal. Yeah. Now, when I go out, I think I can get hard on myself when it's like, hey, I'm gonna go for a 30-minute walk and walk this hill. Like, I keep this here. This is I don't know if I can see it on the screen. It might be kind of hard there. You can't. Anyway, I keep a little running track every day of the week. It's like my little goals for the day, like wake up at 06, get morning sun, wait 90 minutes for my coffee, walk and do yoga, watch jujitsu videos to learn some of those concepts, different work, make phone calls to certain people in my life. Right. And so like when I go out and do my morning walk, it's like when I come back up this hill that's outside here, it's not a huge hill. It's a decent hill. I used to run that kind of hill, like, backwards when I was young. Now walking up that hill, I get to the top and I'm like, whoo, that's a little winding. Right. So having to know, like, all right, dude, you're 55, your knees are a little bit sore. I'll go out. And part of the thing is, like you said, being explosive. doing air squats, right? Rather than when I was young and I would squat 400 or 500 pounds, literally just doing 10 air squats a few times a day, and that's just called getting up and getting down, is managing those expectations, right?
Yes, you have to manage the expectations. We are not who we were 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I have a saying with my clients is I don't want to be at my goals for my exercise and my wellness. I don't want to be any worse today than I was yesterday. I want to
Right.
maintain or improve. And a lot of us look at those metrics because we think of, weightlifting. So now I want to see the numbers go up. I want to see the number. I want to put on more plates and more plates and more, heavier weight, because that was really the only metric. And we can discuss measurables as well and the importance of having those, because you have to have data. When you start your prepping journey wherever you are, you take an inventory, you do a SWOT analysis, of your strengths and your weaknesses and your threats and opportunities. You can do the same with your wellness. I mean, I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm weak at. I know what my opportunities are. I know what my threats are. And you're absolutely right. I have to manage my expectations. So if this is what I'm doing now, you're walking up that hill now, being a little winded. Great. So let's move that needle just a little bit more, Brian. Can we walk up that hill faster?
Yeah.
Can we do, little things, little nudges, exercise? This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. So just little nudges to move that needle to a more positive direction. Pulling levers, I call it pulling levers, doing exercises or other things that help move that needle to where I'm working within my expectations, because I know where I am. I know where I started from, Chris, because you said start where you already are at. So now I have that expectation of just moving that needle a little bit. Can I improve each day? I love your journal that you have, that you're keeping track on it, because if you don't measure it, it won't improve.
Well, and what that does for me, like I start that at the beginning of the week, and I have Sunday through Saturday, right, written on it, and I start checking stuff off. And if I get to a day, and I look back at yesterday, and I'm like, oh, I missed stuff. Let me double down on that, and let me try to get ahead a little bit. I think it kind of holds myself accountable, which I think that's also what people need, right? You need to hold yourself accountable, because it's, I define it. I say that there's two types of struggle, right? Unwanted struggle and wanted struggle. Unwanted struggle is having health issues. And you mentioned cancers, job losses. It's the stuff that we don't want to deal with, but just smacks us in the face. Wanted struggle is the things that we do that aren't easy, that make us uncomfortable, but in the long run, we have a reason for doing it. It makes us mentally, better. It makes us feel more fulfilled. It makes us, healthier. And so getting up, starting where you're at and doing something, walking up that hill or walking out to your driveway with the gallon, mailbox with the gallon of water that you're talking about, where it doesn't feel good. And you're like, my knees hurt a little bit. Yeah. Go see your doctor and make sure you're not hurting yourself. I went to the doctor a few years ago. My left knee was killing me. I mean, just like, in my mind, I'm like, I know I need a knee replacement, right? I've had an ACL replacement. It's been messed up for years. I'm like, I know I need a knee replacement. So when I was out in California, I went to UCLA, saw like one of the top knee guys out there. I'm like, doc, dude, I need this knee replacement. I'm sure of it. And he did all his stuff, x-rays and all that. And he looked at it. He's like, no, you know what you need? You need to use your knee. Like, you need to do it more. And so like, that's when I started doing air squats and, get up and walk. And so, but I think holding yourself accountable, making sure you do that stuff and having those expectations, in my case, anyway, I don't know about everybody else. In my case, that's huge.
Yeah. And there's a lot of great things in there, Brian. I mean, even from you just said, as the doctor saying you have to use your knee, there's that said principle at work. We need to strengthen our knee. Okay. Let's build an exercise program around strengthening Brian's knee, creating a specific adaptation to an imposed demand. We are going to impose stress on this knee to elicit a certain response.
Now, when you say stress, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, I got to stress my knee, right? Like in my mind, that goes to right. Oh, like this is going to really, really suck. But this is just going a little bit more than what you're doing now. Start using it more, doing something more, right?
Yeah. So let's take this word stress now that everybody is panicked about it, and let's give it a couple of parameters that we're going to work within with it. Because you mentioned, stress that, two types of stress, and we have names for this. We call it use stress and distress, where use stress, EUS, use stress, is a deliberate stress that is imposed on the body or the mind that is then removed, that we can recover from, that is beneficial, that is that's building our resiliency, building our grit. Distress is that stress that is, long duration, work stress, family stress. Oh my God, they've locked me out of my house because I haven't paid my bills. Stress, that mental stress that releases certain hormones in the body, particularly a big one, and we can talk about this in measurables, is called cortisol, because everybody's heard of that one. That kind of distress and that eustress that both activate that sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. You've mentioned it on shows. That fight or flight, or that rest and digest. Certain hormones get secreted in those, and when our body is exposed to those hormones over a long period of time, maladaptations happen. That stress, from our body, and we know all the symptoms that come along with stress.
What are some maladaptations that happen with that?
So, I mean, if you look at cortisol, having too much cortisol in the body leads to, all those core morbidities, those type 2 diabetes, because our bodies, the insulin being produced in our bodies is not as sensitive to glucose. So now my sugars are going up. So now I'm a pre-diabetic. Now I'm a diabetic. There are links to, when we are stressed under systems, when our bodies, our cells go through their natural life cycle, they start going through an unnatural life cycle. They die sooner. And when they get replicated, they're not replicated correctly, which leads to, that's what cancer is a growth, cellular growth of an abnormal cell. So all these stressful, long, low stress, that frog in the slow boiling pot, you're just turning that temperature up a little bit. That's that distress that releases that cortisol and adrenaline that's always fighting that fight or flight, because our bodies think we're always fighting a tiger. That tiger is always coming after me.
And I think that's especially important, right, with preppers, right? People in the preparedness mindset, because we're always seeing something in the media, social media, whatever that your place is now, that's causing worry, concern, anxiety, all of that, right?
Right. But if we use it as a positive motivator, right? If I am afraid that wildfires are coming in my area in California that I live in, and I'm going to use that stress to create a plan. Well, that's a use stress to me.
Right.
Because we are now doing useful things from it. And when we do those things that, because after you redo a bag because it's been sitting there for a while, or you're getting it ready for winter or whatnot, and you have that moment of, I just accomplished something. And those happy hormones that get released in our body that are part of that rest and digest, that parasympathetic state, that's all helpful stressors. But if you're just, you're just watching all the doom and gloom on all the other, on all the podcasts and the YouTube and the social media and the mainstream media and all the things that are just doom and gloom and the world is on fire, that beats us down, that goes to that motivation too, where it's just, I just don't want to do it. Versus that commitment that you make to yourself when you look at that calendar and say, today's a cold day. I got to do cold today. Today's a jujitsu day. I got to do jujitsu day. That distress takes away our motivation, and it takes away our commitment to improving our health and wellness. And I use stress with exercise too, because we have this mechanical stress. So when I said we're going to stress Brian's knee, we're going to stress it mechanically. We're going to use machines. We're going to use body weight. We're going to impose some kind of force that joint needs to move around. So that's a mechanical stress. The cold, sitting in the cold tub, the cold tub, using a sauna, those are still deliberate. I call those non-mechanical stressors to the body, right? Where it's an environmental stress. We have, chemical stressors to the body. So there are all types of stressors to the body. It's being able to leverage those stressors and use them as that use stress mode.
So let me ask you this. What are some wellness strategies that, and I know there's a difference. There is a difference. I will state this. There is a difference between a man and a woman. Let's put this out there. That's one of the values of the Mind for Survival podcast. So I don't want to, let's get that out there. So what are some of the wellness strategies, knowing that there's differences that both are either men and women can use? Because it all depends on your time of life and all that, right?
Yes, it does. And yes, men and women, shocker, are different.
Thank goodness. I'd hate
yeah,
to date a woman that looked like had facial hair and everything. That'd be terrible.
Yes, there are differences. And there's, for example, with women, for years, the exercises, like joke with some of my clients, machines are not female friendly. Why? Because they were invented, 1,000 years ago by cavemen. And we don't think about comfort. We think about UGG lift. Whereas, women are not little men. Women are different. And they have different hormones, which makes them women. For example, if I have, and that goes into taking ownership of your wellness and, why it is individual. Because if you are, if you're a male of a certain age, our body is just producing testosterone. We're leaking testosterone. We leave it, a trail of it. Our bodies are primed then for muscle building, for hypertrophy, for strength. Go lift something heavy and do it repeatedly. Put it down and pick up something heavier and do it again, right? But as we age, we start to lose some of that testosterone. So now our training modalities have to change, because that 3x10 that I was doing, 3 sets, 10 reps, that's not going to work for us anymore. We need to implement a little bit more safely heavier lifting. Females, on the other hand, because there's, you have your women who are of a certain age that have a normal cycle. There are times in that cycle where you should be crushing it. You should be going for, as in the CrossFit world, a PR, a personal best, lift it heavy. You can do this. But that second half of their phase, and that's usually in their first half of their phase. In their second half of their cycle, we have limited resources, because their body's resources are now dedicated to one thing, procreation. So now we need to back up. We have limited resources. We need to work differently. We need to work on the skills, so now we might be working more in an endurance phase to also help reduce inflammation. We might want to be working on a skill of, like, let's say, a power lift. One of my clients, we were working on some powerlifting last week as a skill, honing a skill, because I know when she comes in this week, we can crush it based on where she is in her normal cycle. Whereas women of another certain age, where they don't have these cycles anymore, they're missing because they don't have hormones. That estrogen, the progesterone, those hormones drop off.
Yeah.
Well, we need to stimulate that differently, because if you still train in this, 3 sets, 10 reps, 12 reps, I do lighter weight, more reps for endurance. Okay, but we're missing the whole boat, because, the science is behind, stimulating the body with certain exercises, i.e., lift, LHS, lift heavy, excuse my French, shit. 3 sets, 5 reps, ladies, something heavy. It must be a challenge. The other one is Getting that heart rate up super high. One, get on a recumbent bike, go for a walk, go for a run, elliptical, wherever you are at capable wise, really get that heart rate up really high, and then recover. And maybe do 2 of them, okay? Because we need to stimulate your body's hormonal response, and we are going to leverage that via a mechanical stress of weight, of exercise.
How often?
How often? It depends on you. That's a tough question, right? I mean, I have clients that take, I train them for, I see them for an hour, 45 minutes or whatever, and they need 3 days to recover because of where they are in their lifetime. They might be older. They might have other things going on that create such an inflammatory place for them where, okay, I cannot stress them mechanically, so I can't see you for at least 3 days to be doing my squats, deadlifts, insert exercise in the blank, versus, somebody who is, in their 20s, they can work out 4, 5, 6 days a week, run through a wall, as long as you recover. And that's the more important part that really gets missed in this fitness and exercise and in this preparedness community is, okay, go exercise, great. But the recovery of it and being able to adapt to it. So I always start people with, just meet me once at the gym. Let's start building this habit, and then we can start going to, hey, can we do 2 days? Can we tolerate 2 days a week? Fantastic. Let's space them out so you have ample recovery, because then we can fully stress the system again. So then you can recover. And that's the big part, that resiliency, again, it goes back to that resiliency. Deliberately stressing the system via mechanically or some other form, and then having the body be able to recover from it so it can adapt to it.
Something you mentioned earlier, man, was when you were talking about accessibility to all this stuff. And obviously now, and you also hit on this, you said, look, with the way the economy is, I saw a tweet from Kamala Harris yesterday saying, oh, the economy is great. And then I go watch, Patrick Bet David video, and he's like, yeah, people are burning through they're pulling money out of their IRAs at like historic rates to pay for food and gasoline, right? So you can believe the administration, or you could choose to go along with my train of thought that the economy is in a rough spot. And a lot of people are having a difficult time right now financially. So knowing that everybody doesn't have, and if somebody does have the disposable income to do it, getting a coach, getting a trainer, someone that's not out there trying to train you like you're a 21-year-old, NFL football player, but that understands where you are, like Chris is saying, with your personal ecosystem and where you're at in your life, someone that gets that, that's a great way to go. But for those that don't, or those that just want to get started and start wrapping their head around it, you mentioned knowledge earlier. Where is some good places to get the knowledge to know, like, all right, maybe I should walk with, a half a gallon of water, or this is what's good for me, or here's where my heart rate should be. Like, where can people start researching it? Because that's, to me, that's, if someone has the knowledge for what works for them in a lot of ways, then they become an active participant when they're there with a coach, or they're there doing something more. And that just helps level up their game and their wellness overall.
Okay. Great question. Having that accessibility and that knowledge and seeking out a SME, a subject matter expert. One level for females, Dr. Stacy Sims, SIMS. She is the foremost leader on female training. So believe me, whatever I spoke about training females, she's the expert. Take her word for it. And she does great podcasts and a lot of research around training the females. On the male end of it, it really depends on goals of, if you're looking for, hypertrophy building, of just like, I want to be a big, strong muscle guy, or just general fitness. What I always do is, I try to see, I'll watch like a lot of videos and see what are common themes that everybody is talking about. When I started this journey of preparedness, I could listen, if I listen to one person, okay, but you know what? 10 people have all said Sawyer mini water filter. There must be something behind it. Let me go look into it and do my own research and due diligence on it. So that's where it really starts. A lot of the places I go, the NIH, and reading studies, because that's going to give you also a better explanation of what was going on, what were they doing, and who are they doing it to. Because part of, if you've ever read like a study, you'll see that they give you the audience that they worked within. And then they said, this is what we did. Well,
Yeah.
if I'm if I'm a 54-year-old, 60-year-old female in post-menopause state, and I pull up a study that, about, a hamstring injury because my hamstring hurts, and I read about it and read what they did, but realize that this study was a N1 study, so only one person did it, and it was specific to a 26-year-old martial arts student. Well, that's not me. So I need to find more studies. So I always, PubMed, PUBMED,
Yep.
is where I get a lot of my studies. I like to read and research a lot. As far as, longevity, you want to listen to some good podcasts. Huberman Labs is a great resource for just all things wellness and exercise. He did a great one, 3-part one with Dr. Peter Attia, Attia, and they did deep dives on exercise as well. I mean, that's a great series to listen to, those three. And Dr. Attia has a lot of great information. One that I implement with a lot of my clients, that, we went back to picking up that 8-gallon jug of water. That's an old school exercise we knew as a farmer's carry. And if I got that 8 jug, maybe I can go to that, the water bricks, which are 3.5 gallons, or I could go to, a 7-gallon container, whatever I have, and start carrying that. I go to the grocery store, and we are of the ilk of bringing our own canvas bags because we like the environment a little bit. So we put all, when my wife packs it, because she knows I'm carrying it, milk, canned goods, we put them mostly in one bag and make that a challenge to carry to the car in the parking lot. And there is data, scientific data behind grip strength, the correlation of grip strength and longevity. So if I can implement something very easy and accessible that I know is good for everybody, i.e. farmers carrying water, carrying whatever, that's a very simple, easy hack that costs no money, that I can do at any time, because we talk about the cost of things. One of it is time, one of it is resources. I have the water container and I have the time because I'm already walking up the stairs. Pick up the water and walk up the stairs with it.
Yeah. You mentioned Andrew Huberman Labs, and I recommend everybody. And this gets back into like, hey, this is free advice. He's a professor at Stanford. The guy knows like biochemistry and human dynamics, or I don't know the technical names for all the stuff he knows. But if you want to have a starting point, if someone wants to have a starting point, they're like, hey man, I'm in this rut. I'm out of shape. I have trouble getting my motivation and making the commitment that Chris was talking about earlier. Look up Andrew Huberman's morning routine. Right. And it's not some crazy routine. Like his routine literally is go outside for like 10 minutes and get sunlight when you first wake up in the morning. Get sunlight. And if it's cold out or rainy, you still get more sun through the clouds than you do in your house through windows. And he's like, go outside and get sunlight in your face. So if you live in a cold environment, you can bundle up, but get that sunlight in your face. It triggers reactions within our eyes. It's, we wake up with the sun. That's what our species does. And over time, it'll make you feel better. And then he's like, do something that's a little bit strenuous. When he says strenuous, he means go for a walk. That's why I do my morning walk in the morning. I do the jujitsu and I go to a gym. And when I say I go to a gym, I'm not going there and throwing around a ton of weights. I'm on the treadmill for an hour walking, listening to a podcast, listening to some music, whatever. And then I do like some lightweight exercises just to get resistance and motion in. He talks about coffee. How many of us get up and the first thing we do in the morning is coffee? I don't remember the chemical name in the body, but it's one of the chemicals that helps us go to sleep at night. It's built up in our body in the morning, and if you drink coffee, it kind of screws with your normal the circadian rhythm. And he goes, you end up getting you might find that you're tired in the afternoon. So what I do is I wake up, make the bed, go get the sunlight in my eyes, do a couple other things, and then by the time I come back in from all that, it's about 60 minutes or so, maybe an hour and a half after I woke up. Then I have my coffee. And if nothing more, it's gotten me into the routine of doing something positive. Once I get done with that, I'm like, hey, if I just go outside and get sunlight in my eyes for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, stand out in the driveway and, loosen up my old back and do some things. And I come back inside, I'm like, hey, I did something for myself for today. And I feel good about that, right? Like, I mean, it's not like I just took, hey, it's the Marine Corps birthday today, right? It's the November 10th when we're recording this. So it's not like I just took Mount Suribachi and raised a flag on top of it or anything like that. Like I literally walked outside and got sunlight in my old eyes. But it starts like something that simple. Like you don't need money to do that. Actually is having a beneficial effect on your health and well-being, your health and wellness. And that's a starting point. From there, maybe it's, hey, I'm going to walk it. I literally started, this was before I'm down in Texas, before I came to Texas. I started back in LA several months ago where I had just gotten in a rut. And I'm like, all right, I literally started going outside for 5 minutes. Then after doing it for 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, what's an extra 5? And then doing 10. Well, if I'm going to stand out in the driveway looking like a weirdo sitting at the end of my driveway, why don't I go walk for those 10 minutes and actually do a little something? Right? It gets that ball rolling. It gets that commitment, right? To where it becomes a habit and you get going. So when we're talking about the gyms and all this stuff, literally you can start it by walking outside in the morning. And if you don't want to wait 60 minutes for your coffee, wait until you come back inside from walking outside and standing in the sunlight and getting some sunlight in your eyes. The other thing you do, if you walk out there early enough, if you're getting up, you can watch the sun somewhat rising. It doesn't mean you have to be out there at 6 o'clock in the morning when it rises, but when it's still up, it's the morning, and be grateful for that. It's a beautiful sunrise in the morning. You see the sun coming up. All that stuff helps trigger your attitude, and all that stuff's free. It just requires the walking outside your door and doing it. And you're walking out into your driveway. You're walking down your stairs outside or out onto your balcony if you have an apartment and you're in an apartment or something. Like we can all do it. And it doesn't take anything other than being willing to do it and taking the little bit of time that it takes to do it.
Exactly, Brian. And that's why I talk about the accessibility and actionable steps, because listening, watching some of the YouTubes that I watch and listening even to your podcast where it's like, here are actionable steps that everybody can do. As you just said, we can all go outside and walk in the morning. We might even walk, like you said, at the end of the door and get that sunlight in our eyes because it helps with that circadian rhythm. It helps with those hormones that are produced in the body at certain times. Melatonin, the hormone you were looking for, is our sleep hormone. Well, when we wake up and we go out and we see that sun, and that sun is emitting certain wavelengths, it clears out that melatonin in the brain. So that's why we are awake more. And that's why we don't want to look at the blue screens at night, because that affects the melatonin production. The caffeine affects the melatonin production. So now I'm having trouble, as I call it, landing that plane into sleep. We're struggling with that. So what do? We take melatonin pills or gummies, and now we're doing hormone therapy on ourselves. But these simple, accessible things you're doing, just like that. I'm outside, I'm getting that sunlight. Oh, it's a little chilly. Well, let me hang out here a little bit and get some cold therapy too, because it's hugely impactful on our body as well. But you mentioned walking on the treadmill. Brian, for that hour you're spending on the treadmill, what's your heart rate at?
It depends on what I got going on it, but I think it's probably usually around 110, somewhere in there, 109.
Yeah, great. So working in that right around there, is that for most people, subject to you personally, is what we call like a zone 2
Yeah. Well, and
heart
usually
rate.
I have my resting heart rate's usually low. It used to be when I swam in college, it was awesome because my resting heart rate was high 30s, low 40s.
Yeah,
And so it was always fun going to the hospital and like having them take my my pulse rate and my blood pressure. They're like, "Oh my God, we need to do something for you." I'm like, "No, man,
it's
I'm a
cool.
college swimmer, right?" Like,
I'm an athlete. It's
it,
cool.
and so I think my resting heart rate, because that's the other thing I track every day. I have a blood pressure cuff, automatic blood pressure cuff, pulse oximeter, little EKG thing, and I check my heart rate, my blood sugar, my temperature, all that stuff every day. But my resting heart rate's usually in the 60s.
Yeah,
So for me, 109 it's actually pretty, I'm pretty happy with that.
yeah, and that's a great spot to be. And being, for example, working at that level, right, of that zone 2, and you can look this up on the internet, Google, find a little bit reputable site like NIH, where you can put in all your heart rate. Getting your resting heart rate is a free thing to do. You don't even need a
Mhm.
blood pressure cuff for that. I tell my clients, if you can find your pulse, you can
Yeah.
do this. And that's a great metric to measure every day, because that also gives us a glimpse into our wellness. I have a client has a Fitbit wearable. I see his heart rate sometimes at night when he's asleep is in the 80s. What? Are you running in your sleep? Yeah. It's his stress. Yeah. His stress on the body has caused this reaction when he sleeps. So we can see that. And then we make decisions based on that. But when you're working in that zone 2, 1 hour, keeping that steady heart rate, the body starts doing different things when it's creating energy, and it starts releasing more of those anti-inflammatory hormones
Mhm.
and not catecholamines, cytokines
Mhm.
in the body that help reduce inflammation and make us more resilient. So
Yeah.
if you don't have access to a gym, and you just go for a walk in the neighborhood. Last I checked, that doesn't cost anything.
Mhm.
And see if you can. And I tell people, I ask them to tell me a poem. It's a 26-word poem. Here in America, I feel as an American, you should know the Pledge of Allegiance. If you can say the Pledge of Allegiance, just like you and I are talking right now, you're not working hard enough. It should be a little bit of a breathless, labored, I pledge allegiance, give me a second, to the flag of the United. It should be a little breathless. And when we
Yeah.
start working at that kind of level, certain things happen in the body.
Mhm. Yeah,
I know,
that's good. That's good.
and
It's something I think too and I'm a type 2 diabetic, thanks to genetics. And what I do, part of the reason I do I try to do the hour on the treadmill. Part of the reason I walk a half an hour in the morning. Part of the reason I'm like, okay, let me go try to do jujitsu 3 days a week or so is in my mind, I need to do stuff constantly to burn sugar out of my system because there's nothing good that happens with having elevated sugar levels. And a lot of people, unfortunately, especially in our society today that are, I mean, hey man, I'm not the thinnest. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. That's part of the reason why I'm doing all the jujitsu and everything. But we're not we're not the most in shape, thinnest people. We're not like we were when we were in our 20s. And you have a lot of young people that are heavy. Is we're all setting everybody's setting themselves up to be some sort of level type 2, pre-diabetic and all that. Do something that burns the sugar out of your system, man. Go out and burn sugar. And that simple as that walk, that
Mhm.
getting on a treadmill or getting on the recumbent bike, doing something physical activity wise that helps with that. Now, you mentioned like your client that, he's running from lions and tigers when he's sleeping, right? His heart rate's up on his Fitbit. And it's something that I put in the survival pyramid, right? That most people don't usually talk about. And it's the importance of sleep because in the survival pyramids, because after 72 hours, your body will force micro sleeps on you. And so if you're in some sort of, stressful, situation where you need to be on the ball, the body doesn't care that you're in that situation. It's going to tell you like, hey, it's time to rack out. And it's going to put you to sleep for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute. And so that's not good. But when it comes to sleep, what's that impact that sleep has on our wellness? How do people manage it? Give us your sleep dump.
Oh my God, that is That is the number one, in my world,
Mhm.
the number one recovery thing for us that we all have access to.
Right.
And it is paramount above everything else. Like, your sleep, it should be sacred. That is non-negotiable, because everything happens when we sleep. Again, we believe in science here and evolution. We have evolved certain characteristics out of our bodies. You know, we don't have a tail anymore. We evolved around it. You know, we evolve over time. But if something, sleep, where I am totally exposed, I'm asleep. Bears can come in and eat me. I could fall out of this tree. Since I'm a caveman, how come a saber-toothed tiger doesn't come and eat me? We haven't evolved sleep out of our system. That's how important sleep is. Because, as you said, 72 hours, you're taking micro naps. I looked it up. 3 days of no sleep, and we're hallucinating. 11 days and you'll die, but the world record was 264 hours. But 3 days, as you said, you're taking those micro naps, we're hallucinating, and we have to make sleep a priority in our life, because without that, we cannot recover, because that's where a lot of the recovery happens. I mean, I use the example of a house party, okay? I wake up in the morning, I do my thing for the day. Whatever my thing is, I do. And my body burns calories. And those calories create waste. And now I go to bed. So there has been, in my brain and in my body, a house party going on all day long. So now we need a cleaning crew that comes in and cleans out, because I don't want to have a house party in a messy house, right? So during our deep sleep, which is, from 0 to 35% of our sleep should be our deep sleep. That's when the brain recovers itself. There's a lot of the neurological diseases that people suffer from now, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia. That's a buildup of an inflammatory response in the brain that just doesn't always get cleared out consistently. And those alpha-synucleic acid, I'm totally botching that. It doesn't get cleared out, and it builds up in the brain, right? And that creates, a scenario where it builds inflammation, and the result of that inflammatory response is expressed as Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's. So without that deep sleep, and there's, studies coming out now that show a link of lack of sleep, lack of deep sleep, with those increased mental diseases. REM sleep is important as well. That's about 25% of our sleep, and that's where we dream. That's where our heart rate goes up, that rapid eye movement. Our body condenses memories. And then the rest of it is made up of light sleep, where we're cycling back and forth between that deep sleep, that cleaning, as well as that light sleep, that REM sleep, which is where we're getting, all that memory consolidation. Typically, that light sleep, that REM sleep, occurs at the end of our sleep cycle, which is about 6 to 8 hours. So going to bed really late at night, getting up really early in the morning, going to bed, getting up really early in the morning, we're burning that candle at both ends. We're not getting enough deep sleep. We're not getting into our REM sleep. We're missing out on cleaning out that house from that house party. And then what comes in, we have another house party, clean it out. Nope, messy house, clean it out. Messy house, clean it out. And that builds that slow degradation over time due to not cleaning out those inflammatory processes. And that is why I harp on my clients, is you've got to make your sleep your priority. And there are hacks we can do to help with that. And there are ways to measure, the quality of our sleep as well.
What are some of those hacks?
So I shower at night. I'm a night shower person. I need to wash the day off of me. I need to, it gives me my 5 minutes of my mental, it's just me, wash the day off of me. I'm going to turn that temperature up just a little bit where it's a hot shower. I'm not burning my skin, but it's a hot shower. When we go to sleep, our body, our core body temperature has to drop from 1 to 3 degrees to help land that plane to stimulate that deep sleep process and that cleaning process. By taking that hot shower, we're increasing our skin temperature, which will in turn on we'll call it like your internal thermostat. It'll lower that thermostat and say, oh, it's getting hot in here. Let's turn the air conditioning on. And it'll start to lower that body temperature. And it'll start to help land that plane, get you in that deep sleep.
So when you take the hot shower, the body kicks in cooling measures that activate to start cooling it. So when you get out of the shower and you don't have that hot water on you, your body's already started cooling off to get down to that 3-degree lowering of core body temperature to get you into that sleep.
Yes, you've turned that temperature up. Think of a thermostat in your house. What did we used to do when we wanted to get colder? We take a warm washcloth and put it on the thermostat. And that was our hack to make it colder, right? The body is the same way. We're taking a warm washcloth, call it our skin. We're increasing its surface temperature, and the body's going, we're getting a little warm. Let's start to cool it, and it starts to slowly bring it down. Now, that's not, I take my shower, I stand here for a few moments, I do some of my deep breathing, I center myself, and I don't get out of the shower and then just pass out on the floor. It takes about an hour or two for this to land the plane.
Right.
So that's when you can kind of set up my day for tomorrow, check my last little email, have a little something to eat, prepare for bed, brush my teeth, start reading my book, an actual book, and not just, go in and go to bed. So it allows for that. The other hack, which was really interesting, I was really reading a study about it. If you lower the temperature in your house, in your bedroom, to 66 degrees, so it's a little cold, that's also going to help with the deep sleep. It's going to help increase your deep sleep because it's lowering our body temperature, but it also stimulates something called our brown fat in our bodies as well, which is a very good thing to do. I know I said fat, and that's a bad word, but we like having brown fat. We want to have brown fat in our body. And it's by stimulating that, we're lowering our core body temperature as well, and we're able to fall into a deep sleep as well. So those are usually the two easy, simple hacks to do, because everybody showers. If they shower at night,
I hope.
I hope they do. I shower at night, take a warm shower, and go to bed. The other one, like, remember Grandma used to say, put socks on, right? Yeah, that's a thing, because that's going to draw blood and heat away from the core to our feet. And then via our feet, we have special cells down there that help dissipate heat. So it's drawing it there, and then it's help dissipating that heat.
Huh, I didn't know that. I can't wear socks, man.
Yeah,
That's me crazy. I don't even wear socks with my, and then maybe some people think it's gross. I don't wear socks with my shoes. I don't think I ever wear socks unless I have to wear dress shoes. Then I wear socks. But yeah,
well, that's a California thing. I mean, I like not wearing socks. That's a martial arts thing. I'd much prefer to be barefoot than any other way. But
yeah,
I'm putting these dogs in sneakers. I'm putting socks on, man. You get sweaty and swamp foot. Come on, man.
It's my sweat, dude. My sneakers. Don't try to wear my sneakers. You'll be all right.
I'm just looking out for your podiatrist. That's all.
Oh, whatever. So you mentioned, you mentioned obviously fat, and everybody thinks, fat, but what does diet and how much does diet have to do with our wellness? We talk about sleep. What about diet?
Diet's important too. Again, it goes into that ecosystem of our world, where it's, Brian's ecosystem, his forest is made up of exercise and sleep, and nutrition is part of that. It's a big part of it too, because that's our fuel for our body. That's our fuel that gives us calories, that allows us to do everything in our day. I could say eat healthy. That's easy for me to say. Everybody can say eat healthy. All right. Well, what does that mean, Chris? What does I do? And I can tell my clients, look, if it comes through a window, it's not food. Don't go to the drive-through. That's not food.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, well, I'm pressed for time. All right. Did you make dinner last night? Yes. Good. Next time, make extra and portion that out as your lunch the next day. That's what I did. Made chicken last night, chicken, salad, and a muffin, cornbread muffin last night. Okay, great. I had my serving for tonight, and I made an extra serving for the next day. But that, again, takes commitment, right? It takes intentional effort.
It's not
Michelle is
easy all the
wonderful.
time.
She makes a menu for the week, so we know exactly what we're buying when we go to the food store. So now I know exactly what I need for the food store. And then each night when she makes dinner, or she has me out on the grill, everything is already prepared out step by step. We're having this on Monday, this on Tuesday, this on Wednesday. This makes extra to go here, so we have extra for lunch the next day. Oh, I know I need to, marinate this overnight, so this comes out the day before. It lays everything out. The nutrition is a very important aspect because that's, as I said earlier, the fuel that drives us.
Yeah, I think, when I look at it and I talk about on the show, and it's something I really try hard to do and to lean into, it's, you mentioned people go get it out of the fast food place, right? The amount of processed food people eat, and you could look, I mean, you can go online and you could look at the same brand of food and look at the ingredients here in the US and look at the ingredients in Europe where they're more stringent upon how healthy things need to be. And you don't see all the methyl, ethyl, bad stuff that's in it. Like there's so many chemicals, and it just, and I haven't always been this way. I used to be like a super fast food junkie, right? But then when you start looking at what you're eating, and it's like, that's a chemical. Like it's just a straight up chemical that, where did we ever think about that? And that was good. Like where do we ever think that was good? And the other side on that is with the inflation going up and everything, look at your fast food places and look how much food's gotten, much more expensive fast food's gotten. If you're trying to save money because times are getting more lean and all this, and you're worried about the economy and your preparedness because, I don't have enough money to afford the whatever it is you need for your preparedness, stop eating fast food and start cooking your food. If you're smart about it, you can do a lot better on your finances by eating at home, and then you control what goes in your food. That Big Mac you're getting, the taco you're getting from Taco Bell, that's not a hamburger and that's not a taco. That's a wrapper full of garbage that doesn't do well for your health. It's not good for you. It's convenient, but it's not good. Same thing goes, one of my pet peeves, because I might have one a year, is soda. Stop drinking the freaking sodas. They're terrible for you. Look at what's in a soda. Like if you were really going to drink a soda like the old school sodas, it would be water, sugar, and some sort of like whatever they made the flavor with back in the day. Go look at a Coke, see what's in a Coke can. It isn't water and sugar. You're not going to find any sugar in there unless you buy Mexican Coke, maybe.
It's amazing. And again, it goes back, it all comes together. If you think about this, even the little pieces come together. Okay, I'm going to meal plan out. So now I know exactly what I need. So now I can budget better with what I buy. And you know what? I can go to the farmer's market and I can go get food there that's better. We got eggs from the farmer's market. Wow, they taste better than the eggs from the food store. It's not just here's some bland thing and I'm going to mix in my everything but the bagel seasoning into it. No, it tastes like an egg. And it's cheaper than the food store. And C, I'm giving it to the guy or the woman that actually grabbed the chicken and grabbed the egg from the chicken, right? So I'm from an economic standpoint, I'm keeping that money within my community. I'm supporting my community. I'm eating healthier because my peppers taste like peppers because I get it from the farmer's market. My apples taste like apples. They don't have all the other stuff and they're cheaper than getting it from the food store. So now I've worked on my budget, and we have our, you know, in our preparedness community, when we talk about food storage and talk about storing what you eat and eat what you store, hey, show of hands, how many stores oats, right? Do we eat said oats? Yes. Go grab those oats. If you're not, grab the oats off your shelf and make oatmeal for you in the morning. Because the oatmeal, is it's cheap because I store it and I rotate it through. So I have that. I'm eating
Buy 'em
something
bulk.
before. And it's healthy because as a complex carbohydrate, oatmeal helps regulate your blood sugar. It keeps you out of those peaks and valleys. So now that I'm eating this oatmeal for a while and I'm staying out of these peaks and valleys, now my adrenal glands and my pancreas that secretes insulin doesn't need to work as hard. So now it's not as overly sensitive. So now my glucose levels drop. Oh, wow. All by just eating the oatmeal that's out of my own pantry that every once in a while I replace and cycle out. I mean, why don't we
Yeah.
do just that simple hack? We'll have huge, all right, you know what, Chris, I'm overweight. My knees hurt when I move and my sugar's through the roof. Okay, great. We might not be starting with air squats and walking up and down the stairs with your water container that's 3.5 gallons. But you know what? You can still eat oatmeal. And
You
that's
can
going to,
dial in your diet.
yeah, and that's just going to help start you in a thing. I'm sorry, it starts you in that mode, that path down through
Yeah.
this wellness ecosystem.
It's the first step. It could be one of the very first steps. And I think you have to, when I say don't have sodas, I'm not saying don't ever have a soda. If you want to have a soda once in a while, sure. Right. Like I don't do it just because I taste it now. And maybe it's just in my mind. I think I taste the chemicals like, I can't drink this. But at the same time, if you want to have one once in a while. But how many people out there, if you're driving, this isn't trying to shame you or any of that. It's just trying to make you think about it. How many
Yeah.
people knock back 3 or 4 sodas a day?
Oh.
One a day. I don't drink coffee. I drink a can of, Diet Pepsi. The Diet Pepsi isn't that good. Isn't diet for you because Diet Pepsi still elicits an insulin response. Right? The chemicals in it trigger an insulin response, especially if you don't have it with food. And so if you have a Diet Pepsi, it's still causing a response that is not healthy for you. So think about it. Start and maybe you're drinking, you're hooked up on on Cokes and Pepsis or Mountain Dews or Monsters and all that. Start work by dialing it back. Just say, okay, I drink 3 a day. It's like quitting smoking, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to smoke 1 less cigarette a day. Try drinking 1 less Pepsi a day. And then maybe, a couple of weeks down the road, you go down to 1 a day. However that works, they're not healthy for you. And we know, and everybody, I think if you're listening to this, or like we go back and you are listening to this, we all know that stuff is not good for us. There's nowhere that you can convince yourself that deep down, that Coke and Pepsi aren't good for us. And all the additives and preservatives in fast food is not good for us. I mean, I think in the preparedness community, many of us rail about corporations and they're out there screwing people over and they're doing this for profits and profits. Yeah, they're filling the thing. I'm not even gonna call it food. The stuff that they give us through fast food, they're filling it full of garbage because they get more money. They have higher profit margins. Instead
Yeah.
of putting beef in there, in the prepper community, we hear about the miracle, like the fake meat now, right? The lab grown meat and all this stuff, right? Well, they're not putting top quality meat in your stuff because they make more money. So think about that when you go to buy it. You are paying to make yourself less healthy.
Yeah. And even like look at that Big Mac, like actually physically before you take a bite out of it, stop and look at that sad excuse of a burger. For the $6.50 it just cost you for that burger, you can make one. You can make a far healthier one. Now again, it takes time, which is a resource a lot of us don't have. But we have the ability. We have this thing called refrigeration, where we can make it ahead of time. I have colleagues that make all their meals on a Sunday. And then they prepackage them all up. So they just, because they're so busy, I got to grab it and go, because we know, the fast food is not good for us. But you know what, Brian, I'll tell you a secret. I had 2 slices of pizza and a soda yesterday for lunch. I know. Shocker.
Aren't you from Brooklyn or something like that?
Close enough. Long Island. But
Long Island. It's in your DNA. You're from New York. It's in your DNA.
And this is one of the few places down here that actually makes good pizza. And Michelle and I were driving past it, and we're like, hey, we want to stop and get something for lunch. Why don't we just stop right over here? Okay, great. Let's just stop there. Had a slice, had a soda, a Sprite that I'm like, wow, that's sweet. And that was the last time I had that was, I don't know, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
I tell my client, but we earn it. We earn the right to eat those things. Kale is better for you than chocolate cake. And I had them both yesterday for dinner. Well,
I might have to tap out on the kale and go for the chocolate cake, but
this is okay. I had my kale, have more kale than chocolate cake, but I feel you should never deprive yourself.
Yeah. And, and I think when people think about this stuff too, especially when it comes to like the food they eat, it's because a lot of being healthy, eating healthier doesn't taste as good. It doesn't, right? Like, I mean, that glass of water, it's all I drink pretty much is water. I'll have an iced tea, non-sweet tea sometimes, right? That's why I grew up on non-sweet tea. I can't stand sweet tea. Anyhow, I miss having the flavored waters and the flavored this, and, the sodas and all that sometimes. But when I go to do it, I'm like, is this good for me? Which is better? And so it's a choice, and it gets back to, I think, that commitment. It's before you do it, go, okay, I know this isn't good for me. Remind yourself. You say it enough times and you mean it, and like, this soda isn't good for me. Well, you're going to cut back on them. And that's the starting point, right? Just start cutting back. Like, you're not going to change that stuff overnight usually, but maybe you do, but start making healthier choices. If you're eating fast food 5 days a week and you go down to 4 days a week, that's an improvement. You're on the road.
That's a win right there. Don't cut it out entirely, because then what's happening, you're depriving yourself of something you either like, chocolate cake, or something you're used to doing. And then you're like, oh, I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. And that, just saying that over and over again, that it creates a hormonal response in the body.
Yeah.
So then it's like, I'm depriving myself. I'm going to go back to doing what I want to do. I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. I'm not going to get as much benefit even from it. I'm not even going to see the benefit from it. I'm just not going to do it because I have that negative thoughts.
Yeah.
Even those negative thoughts versus those positive thoughts of, this is good for me. There's studies behind that.
Yeah.
That we can even trick our brains and our bodies just by thinking about it. And as I said earlier, it has to be intentional effort. There's a great study just on that, where they gave people identical shakes, identical chocolate shakes. And they said, Brian, shake A is our shake that's a meal replacement shake. It's loaded with, it's healthy and it's got all these carbs and sugars and everything, and it's going to keep you full. And they drank it. And they saw in the body, the response was if you're eating a full meal, releasing certain hormones in the body. And then they said, okay, Brian, we're going to give you shake B. And that's our, it's our weight loss one. Low calories, still going to taste good, but it's low calories, no sugar, no fat. Drink that one. And they drank it, and they measured the people's hormones and blood tests, and they saw a difference. That the body thought, oh, this is a dietary kind of drink. It's not giving me the calories I need, so I will still have to start using calories. Aaliyah Crum is her name. She does a great TED Talk on it, about the differences in just the shakes of our intention of what's behind, of what we're getting. They did, and they did another one with back surgeries and pain killers and the placebo effect. It is a real thing, that placebo effect, and it should be embraced. And she does 2 great TED Talks on that, on the placebo effect. And those are some, I give my clients homework of certain TED Talks to watch. And that's one of them is watch that, because it's the intention that really is important,
Yeah.
and that's where we get our calories from, is food.
Mhm.
And it's our fuel to maintain our bodies. And I don't know very much about cars, but I like to use a lot of car references. As a James Bond fan, an Aston Martin gray DB5 is my car. When I'm a bazillionaire, that's my car. And now, what kind of gasoline am I going to put into that? Am I going to put in the high test, the premium, the quality gasoline? Or am I going to go get the camel urine on the corner, or the elephant urine on the corner, and put that low grade gas? And if I want to put that low grade gas in my car, then I'll go to McDonald's and get my Big
Yeah.
Mac out of the window. If I want
Yeah.
that high quality fuel for this high quality machine that I'm going to power and run, well, then I want that high quality fuel, that farmer's market stuff, the fresh local stuff, because I only have one Aston Martin DB5 in my body. We only have one of them. So why not put the best fuel we can have access to into it versus the low grade stuff?
Well, and it's like you're hitting on something that it's mindset, right? And since this is the Mind for Survival, it's mindset, and you have that choice. Do I want to put the garbage in? And here's the thing that I try to remind people of is, over our lifetimes, we've wired in these neural pathways, these super highways in our brain that goes, oh, I'm hungry for something, I'm thirsty for something. Boom, Coca-Cola. Boom, Diet Pepsi, whatever that thing is. And that's what in our mind will satisfy that. The challenge becomes, and since we know those aren't healthy for us, the challenge becomes rewiring our brain, right? Getting off that superhighway, taking the exit and finding a new pathway to get to the water, to get to the the non-chemical loaded iced teas, to get to whatever something is that accomplishes the same objective. So when you're going down that road and you find yourself reaching for the Diet Coke, you may grab it and start drinking it before you even go, oh, I shouldn't have drank it. I should have drinking something else. Remind yourself at that point, all right, next time I'm going to try to do better. Next time I'm going to try to grab the water. I'm going to go for water instead. Maybe you go in the fridge and you put a glass of water, or a container of water that you can drink out of right in front of that Diet Coke. So, or next to it. So at least when you look, if you actually look in there instead of just grabbing, there's the water and you go, oh, I should drink water. You may not drink the water. You might still go for the Diet Coke. But you do that over and over again, and and every time when you grab that Diet Coke or Coke, whatever it is, and you say, "I should have the water," and you start convincing yourself, you're rewiring your brain to trying to get get another path going. When I'm thirsty, and eventually you might grab the water, and when you grab that water, I don't know, throw some ice in it, something that tastes good, right? Makes it feel good, and you start drinking it. Over time, you'll start going, oh, that water, and you tell yourself that water was pretty good. And be proud of the fact that you made that decision, that you grabbed that water, and congratulate yourself. Like, wow, I'm happy. I did that. I'm good. I didn't take the Coke. I'm one, less Coke. I'm that much healthier now. And so next time, try it again. Over time, and it might take you months, but over time, you can rewire your brain so that you're going for the water, and eventually you don't even have any Cokes in your fridge.
I love it.
This stuff takes time. We have lifetimes of bad habits that are hardwired in our brain. This isn't because you have shitty willpower. This isn't because of all that stuff necessarily. It's because it's so hardwired in our brains. And this is the route we're going.
I love that hack of having that water next to that Pepsi. And follow me on this rabbit hole, because this is a perfect example of how it's these are not separate things. They all go together.
Mm-hmm.
You like that Coca-Cola. I want I'm thirsty, I want a Coke. What happens in our brain? Dopamine gets released to drive me to go get that Coca-Cola. That is an addiction response. Just like crack, just like heroin, cigarettes, coffee, that soda is an addiction response. So we have a certain pathway in our brain that controls that. However, it's November. It's November 10th, as you said. It's getting cold. It was 46 degrees outside today. I went outside in my t-shirt and I hung out in my t-shirt. It's a little cold. I'm going to get some cold exposure. What does that cold exposure do? It secretes dopamine, right? There's one or two studies out there that talk about the relationship between cold therapy and and addiction, in that when you're doing your cold therapy, you are stimulating those same addiction pathways. And then what you can start to do, as you said, train yourself through that adherence, that commitment to it, okay, I'm doing this cold exposure thing, and I'm getting this influx of dopamine in my brain, and I'm helping rewire that drive, being able to control that mental drive. Well, now when I want to go to reach, I'm thirsty. Now I'm fighting that urge. I have more tools in my toolbox to now fight that addiction to go for that, Coca-Cola, than going for, water and making that better decision. And I know I can go for that water. Why? Because I listened to Brian and I put right next to that can of Coke my bottle of water. So now I'm going to go grab my bottle of water. So all these levers we can pull in this ecosystem help influence other things that can help. Yes, again, it is, as you said, willpower. That's part of it, but it is also hormonal, and being able to channel that and control that, and having a stress, and then being able, with mental clarity, make decisions in that stressful situation.
Right.
Mindfulness and resiliency right there. So now I can train myself out of drinking Coke. Am I saying go outside and stand in the cold and you'll stop drinking Coca-Cola? No. However, you're giving yourself an added advantage by doing something that's totally free and accessible. I have a t-shirt on, it's cold outside. 1 + 2 = cold exposure.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's true too. And I think it's good because if you're into preparedness and you're trying to build your resilience, right? When times get hard, because you've done hard things. And hey, stopping drinking Coke, if you've drank Coke for years every day, it's a hard thing.
Yeah.
Going out, I do it. I don't like being cold, but I haven't done the ice bath things yet. Just because I don't have an ice bath to do it in. I just don't want to go grab bags of ice and fill up the bathtub and then have to go grab more bags of ice and all that. But at the same time, going out and standing in the cold for 5 or 10 minutes, it's not comfortable. It shivers. I've been seriously cold at times. I've had hypothermia at times. But you do things that are difficult. When times get difficult, you'll be that much more prepared to deal with it. You'll be that much more resilient. It improves your ability to be more self-reliant. Like, okay, you go out, times get hard and it's cold outside, and now you're forced into it, and like, oh, the car broke down. I'm on the side of the road. I didn't have my coat with me. It's cold outside. Yeah, I've dealt with cold all the time. I've done cold exposure. Now I got this, right? It helps make you more resilient overall.
Yes, it does. You're 100% correct. I am not promoting you go give yourself hypothermia.
No.
Outside, but it is. In my world, we call it hormesis. It's a hormetic response. We should be uncomfortable at times, but we're not, because we have air conditioning. I have food in a fridge within almost arm's reach of me. We live very comfortable lifestyles, which decreases our resiliency. But just having a little bit of struggle, deliberate is the key word, right? Because we want to create that use stress scenario, that deliberate imposition of cold, imposing cold on you, and then being able to remove it creates that hormetic response in our bodies. It helps us become more resilient, and increase our, I like to use the word grit, because we can grind it out. We're getting better at it because we are adapting to that imposed demand. Yeah. That deliberate, cold allows it, create certain properties in it. I'm using the cold just because it's easy for all of us to access, whether you go outside in the cold. I know people that schlep the bags of ice up and down and in. I'll give you an easier one, Brian. Your hands in cold water, just your hands, 57 degrees of cold water. Start where you are. 3 minutes is your goal. And that will start to create an environment to help produce those, some of those positive effects of cold exposure. I'm lucky. I'm fortunate. I am very lucky to have access to all these great mechanical tools in a gym. I have a cold tub in the back that I use 2 to 3 times a week for myself alone. Not much less my clients. I use it with them as well. Have them use the tub. I use it, but I have access to it. It's easy for me to get it because I have access to it. And if you do have access to it, absolutely do the cold plunging. If you don't have access to it, hey, let's create some scenarios for it. Using just cold water. The cold shower, I'm a little iffy on, only because when I checked the other day, my cold water gets a very balmy 69 degrees. That's not cold enough. 57 is that level. But you got to meet yourself where you are. Michelle, hands at 57, and that's it for her. That's all she can handle for the cold. She doesn't do cold very well. Me, I'll be in the tub, 47-ish degrees. I think 44 was my coldest. I had to stop doing it for a while, now working my way back down to it. So I'm slowly progressing myself back down to that, 44, 36 degrees. That's a little too cold for Chris. I don't know. I don't know about getting in there right out the gate.
Right.
But we have time to work on these things. Nobody says, just like preparedness and our preparedness journey, hey, this is what I'm going to get prepared for. Oh my God, I get all these things done in a day. This won't happen in a day. This takes time, that consistent. I'm a big Clint Eastwood fan. I love Clint Eastwood. Even all the spaghetti westerns. Pale Rider, for whatever reason, is one of my favorite ones.
Great movie.
It is a great movie. And there's the scene. Remember the scene with he's the priest. Michael Moriarty was the actor. He was the guy from Law and Order. He's the priest, and you have Clint Eastwood, and the two of them are grinding away with that pickaxe and then on that big rock in the little river. And he keeps hitting it with that pickaxe. And he says to him, I believe that there's gold down there. Every day I just keep coming out here and working to get there. We know, based on the studies, based on science, based on how we feel, we know there's gold underneath that rock. We just have to keep grinding at it with our pickaxe. We just have to keep hitting it with that pickaxe to get to that gold.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it all starts with one step. Whether, like you mentioned, it's a great option, right? Go put your hands in some ice water inside your sink. Put the plug in the sink, get it cold, put your hands in it. It's 3 minutes. While that may seem like, when I go outside, and part of my thing, I'll go outside and all right, I'm going to stand outside here for 10 minutes. Next thing I know, 8 minutes into it, I'm thinking like, oh man, I'll just go back inside now. I have to force myself like those last couple minutes. But when you think of it, if you get your mindset right, it's only 3 minutes. Go put your hands in cold water for 3 minutes. Yeah, it might suck for those 3 minutes, but then when you get done, again, congratulate yourself. You're trying to rewire your brain, right? You're trying to make it be something good and positive. congratulate yourself. I used to go into the supermarket. I couldn't walk into the supermarket. And I finally figured out like what I had to do. And man, I treated myself like I was getting ready to go play in the Super Bowl, like going to the supermarket. And when I got out, it was like, woohoo, we won. Good job. So you might have to do that. Again, you're rewiring your brain. This is where it starts. Like, this is the foundation of being better prepared, being as healthy as possible for your circumstances. And so bringing it back around, and before we start wrapping up a little bit here, maybe kind of towards the wrap it up, is what are some actionable tips and tricks? I mean, we've talked about a bunch during the show, but what do you have as some actionable tips and tricks? So people have listened to the show, when they get out of here, they can go, oh, okay, here's some things I can do to start heading down that path, or to enhance where my wellness from where it is right now.
Again, you start where you are, and that's taking inventory. You know, when I first said to myself, we're going to go down this path, this journey, take an inventory. What do we have to start with? And that is it's a personal thing of, what am I physically capable of doing? What am I mentally capable of doing? And having those metrics and measurables, a simple 1 or 2 hacks to help improve your sleep, which is the biggest lever to pull for your health, is lowering that temperature in that room. Mm-hmm. And lowering the temperature in the room, and having that, or taking that hot shower a little bit earlier before bed. Doing for the exercise, we all have, because that's our entry drug to preparedness, is a get home bag and a bug out bag. Start with just lifting it up. Lift it up more than once a year when you go to switch out your summer to your winter gear. Be able to lift it up. Be able to lift it up more than once. Start working with what I have. Everything has weight. Everything has mass. Your water is a consistent 8.3 pounds. So now if I add 1 water, 2 water, 3 gallons of water, 7-gallon water tank, wherever you are at in your fitness level, making it a little bit more challenging each time, but realizing that your fitness level, your fitness decisions are different than other people's as well. So not looking at them going, well, you should be doing this because this is what I'm doing. All right, well, I got 2 bum knees and a bad back. There's no way I'm deadlifting 400 pounds. Mm-hmm. But implementing that farmer's carry, because it's carrying something heavy, carrying it off to one side, which now has to work with our balance a little bit. And we got to walk a little faster. So we're working that cardiovascular, we're working some more of that explosiveness stuff, and our grip strength, which correlates with the longer longevity, and just eating a little cleaner. We've mentioned it a few times. I love the cold therapy for all of the effects that it gives you. Be a little bit uncomfortable to help stimulate that resiliency growth, that adaptation to a deliberate stress that is, intentional, it is and focused, and being committed to doing that stress over and over again, and what is the smallest I can do? What is the least amount I can do to make this more challenging? Baby steps.
That's awesome, man. Well, that was a good show, dude. I appreciate it. Before we go get out of here and stuff, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you? Tell them a little bit about AIM, whatever you need to get people to get in contact with you.
So, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, aimhumanperformance.com, AIM Longevity Lab.
That's AIM, AIM, humanperformance.com, everybody. And finally, if you like what you have heard here today and seen here today, please go to your to whatever podcasting app you're on, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, all that, and leave an honest 5-star rating and review. If you're watching the video here on YouTube, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and enjoy. I hope you got a lot out of this, everybody. And until next week, stay safe, secure, and prepared. And remember, you are just one prep away from being better prepared. Bye for now.